Moving from COVID-19 denial and a tough diplomatic stance under the previous president, Tanzania under President Samia Suluhu Hassan is steadily tackling COVID-19 with firm action. It's been 100 days since Vice President Hassan became President Hassan after the death of John Magufuli. One of her earliest actions was the reversal of electricity charges. And relations with Tanzania's neighbors have a new lifeline. The president has traveled twice to Uganda and made a 2-day official visit to Kenya, looking to rebuild relations between Kenya and Tanzania that had been strained under Magufuli's leadership. The two countries had disputes on cross-border trade, tariffs, and other issues. Last week, she was in Mozambique to attend a Southern African Development Community Summit. She's not only improving relations with her direct neighbors in Eastern Africa, but she's also improving relations with SADC countries in the southern part of the continent. In her early speeches, the president called on foreign direct investment, which is in many instances means changing policies internally. Recently, she caused a stir when she ordered the country's central bank to prepare for the use of cryptocurrencies as a legal tender. Today, we're looking at the economics of President Hassan's first 100 days in office. This is Business Edge. Welcome. Now joining me on Business Edge today is News Central's researcher Abdulateef Ahmed. Abdulateef, welcome once again to Business Edge. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
So let's get straight into this. It's been 100 days since President Hassan took office. On July 1st, 2020, the World Bank announced that the country had attained the middle income status with a gross domestic national income per capita of $1,080, which was up from an average of $622 in the previous administration. Now, the former president, John Magufuli, was able to maintain a 7% economic growth rate. Before that went down to about 5.5% last year due to the COVID-19 pandemic, which also affected most of Tanzania's trading partners and sectors. So in terms of staying in the same line with her predecessor, what were the economic expectations of the president when she took over?
Thank you. When she took over, there were a few things which had caused economic stagnation and economic hiccups for the country. And she was able to quickly set things into motion by changing the finance minister and the head of the tax authority. And within a few weeks, she was able to make appointments that gave a direction to her government. And so that is essentially one thing she did quickly that set the country on a path of recovery.
All right. So when we talk about her possibly deviating from the legacy of John Magufuli, who did try his best in the time he was there, but even though there were issues with the civic space as well as the opposition, where do you notice her deviating the most? You talk about her firing somebody, and that came about because there was also a corruption scandal attached to that individual. But beyond that, how is she now sort of laying her own path as president of Tanzania?
Most significant that you will observe is her stance on COVID-19. She's been more positive about receiving vaccines. She's not a denialist. She's been speaking about the need to be more protective, to implement procedures that will ensure that there's a reduction in the COVID-19 cases, and she's been promoting safety measures in comparison with the previous president. And by doing that, and hopefully we think there'll be publishing of the numbers of COVID-19 cases, it will begin to attract tourism, which used to be the mainstay of the country. So that is a good move, and it has by far increased a lot. You know, international donors have begun to pour in funds into the country. Some few days ago, Zanzibar got about $260 million or thereabout dollars for economic growth and revitalization of the industries in that region.
Okay, so let's look at where she is right now. So she is president at a time where economic growth has slowed significantly in Tanzania. Now, the real gross domestic product growth rates fell from 5.8% in 2019 to an estimated 2% in 2020. And per capita growth has turned negative for the first time in more than 25 years. The global economic slowdown adversely affected export-oriented industries, especially tourism and traditional exports, and also caused a drop in foreign investment. Now, although the government did not really impose stringent mobility restrictions because the former president was denying COVID, the pandemic did prompt firms and consumers to adopt precautionary behaviors, which have hindered domestic economic activity. Meanwhile, you also saw steep declines, in production, consumption, and imports that has significantly reduced fiscal revenue. So with all of this combined, with the fact that she is making overtures not just in East Africa, but also to the southern part of the continent and outside of the continent, what plans has President Hassan laid out in order to deal with the fallouts from the pandemic?
So very important steps she's taken. Recently on Saturday, she did address a group of Tanzanian investment forum where she did mention the fact that three critical components of the economy is going to be revitalized, one of which is the Bagamoyo port, which is a $10 billion investment. It is expected to have several industries to come up, once it starts. And so in spite of all of this that has happened to Tanzania, recovery from COVID-19 and all of that, the slowdown of investment in the tourism sector, Tanzania still had over 92 industry investment, and the value of this investment is put to about $3.5 billion between March and June. That's about over 40% leap compared to what it was at the same period in 2020.
So let's talk about her approach to her neighbors. Now, she's been personally meeting with the heads of state and organizations and has shown her plan to open up and also strengthen Tanzania's diplomatic relations. So what we know she has done so far, from the early days, she has indicated that she would pursue diplomatic and economic partnerships in the region. She's had key meetings with Uganda and Kenya as well as Mozambique. And let's see. So she had a 2-day state visit in May to Kenya, and she and President Uhuru Kenyatta witnessed the signing of a deal to deliver natural gas from Dar es Salaam to Mombasa by pipeline, and also to resolve clear trade hurdles to increase cross-border trade, and which means removing non-tariff barriers. She's also met Uganda's Yoweri Museveni twice, in April for the signing of the East African crude oil pipeline deal, and in May to sign the host government agreement for the project as well. What do you think are some of these moves that the president has made so far? These are very impressive moves because no country can actually grow in isolation. And it is impressive that she's meeting both the East African countries and Southern African countries, because you see its closest neighbor to the south is Mozambique, which is a very troubled region. And it is no wonder that she was invited to the SADC meeting recently. Her overtures to neighboring countries are actually welcome, because most of the contracts, projects between Uganda and Tanzania has been stalled over the years because ex-President John Magufuli was looking to restructure the contracts. He thought these projects were somehow skewed in favor of other countries involved in the contracts. And so it's kind of slowed things down. So her meeting up with the neighboring countries are actually welcome, and they are going to really impact positively on growth, investment, and enterprise. Recently also, she did meet with billionaires, African billionaires, Dangote and Mohamed Zaudi in and interesting enough, Aliko Dangote did have some good things to say about her, as well as the moves she is making in Tanzania. Abdulatif, we'll take a break now, but when we come back, we'll talk about that construction liquefied natural gas project that has been delayed in Tanzania. Again, as he did note, Tanzania is neighbors with Mozambique, which is experiencing an insurgency because of its own LNG project. What does that mean for Tanzania? We'll also look at COMESA and look at a number of other issues. What do we expect in the 1 year that President Hassan will be president? And we will, of course, be noting that. We'll pick up the thread of this conversation when we come back. This is Business Edge right here on News Central. We're looking at the first 100 days of President Samia Suluhu Hassan in Tanzania, particularly her economic decisions and actions. My guest is Abdulateef Ahmed. He's researcher here at News Central. Now, Abdulateef, Tanzania has announced plans to begin the construction of a delayed $30 billion liquefied natural gas project in 2023. And that follows the resumption of talks with the companies. And you made some allusion to that earlier, saying that the former president was not happy with the deal. Now, the project has gained momentum since President Hassan took office in March, and she directed her administration to fast-track delayed investments. There are plans for an LNG plant on Tanzania's southern coast, and a pipeline connecting offshore fields has also been under consideration since 2014. So we know that the talks stalled for about a year with her predecessor. Now, the announcement on the construction of the project comes months after Total SE suspended work on a similar plan in neighboring Mozambique following insurgent attacks. So do you think that Tanzania will be able to benefit from this situation in Mozambique? That was meant to be the largest private investment anywhere on the continent. It's now being stalled indefinitely. Force majeure has been declared on that because they're not sure of how long the insurgent situation will last. But we see Tanzania going ahead with a $30 billion LNG project. And their neighbors, we also know this insurgency could spill over as well. What do you think of Tanzania's plans right now?
As it stands now, Tanzania is relatively peaceful, and it is hoped that this project will improve the revenues and the general economic outlook of the country. One, injecting that sum into the system will mean the creation of more jobs. It will impact the immediate local economy, and then it will bring about a transformation of relationship between the two countries. Because of an investment this much, I'm trying to see, or I'm projecting that there will be more bilateral agreements on security and protection of the ecosystem and the pipelines that run between the two countries. So it is Tanzania's gain, anyway, that the Mozambique situation is yet to be resolved.
All right. We also know that there is some history, especially with COMESA. Now, Tanzania withdrew membership from COMESA in about 2000 because it was already a member of several regional economic integration groups. We saw the president being invited for that special extraordinary session of SADC last week as well. We also know that Tanzania is moving ahead with ratifying the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. With all the things going on, do you think President Hassan may consider having Tanzania rejoin COMESA? These regional economic blocs are really looking at reducing non-tariff barriers to trade, trying to make sure they integrate each other. We're seeing road projects, networking projects that will connect them, gas pipeline projects. Do you think this is a good time for her to consider Tanzania rejoining COMESA? Yes,
it is. The reasons that were put forward for withdrawing from COMESA at the time Tanzania did was essentially because it could not cope with the trade tariff situations, and it was seen that it will be at the short end of the stick, and that is why it did withdraw. As it is now, everything is working, to boost the economy of Tanzania. She has opened up the country for investment, and she has boosted investors' confidence. She has tried to encourage the private sector to, get things going. So it is to Tanzania's advantage to join COMESA. It is likely that Tanzania would consider rejoining COMESA.
And we spoke earlier about meetings that the president has taken part in. She's had some other meetings recently as well. Some would say she's going on the diplomatic charm offensive. So she had a virtual meeting with the IMF Executive Director, Kristalina Georgieva, which unlocked a $571 million loan. The IMF said it's already processing funding to help Tanzania cushion the effects of COVID-19. In April, she met with Mara Warwick, the World Bank's country director in Tanzania, Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, and pledged her cooperation with the Bretton Woods institutions. Now, Warwick said that the World Bank had approved loans to the tune of $4.9 billion for supporting various development projects in the country, making Tanzania among the leading recipients of the bank's funding. So we're now seeing moves for more loans that are coming into the picture. What do you think of this situation?
Again, it is for someone who is a graduate of economics from the UK, she has a good understanding of how these institutions work, and it is likely that with the new appointments she's made, the considerations that will be put forward to the advantage of Tanzania, things that she will be considering. It's a win-win if the loans and these FDIs are well managed.
So interestingly enough, we've seen some forward-thinking moves by the president in recent times, and that has to do with cryptocurrency. Now, there was apparently some kind of ban on cryptocurrencies in Tanzania, but in recent times, we've heard from the central bank that they're looking to push forward and find regulation. And this comes, of course, from the comments of the president who has directed them to do that. What do you think of this? We're still finding a situation where many African countries are trying to get a hand of the cryptocurrency situation and how it may threaten central banks, but it's also liberalizing the financial services sector as well. When you see her pushing forward for this in Tanzania, what do you make of it?
It is an exciting news, especially considering the strategic position of Tanzania in East Africa. Don't forget the M-Pesa regime and all of that has made business investment and SMEs really gain a lot, made it easy for people. And so the cryptocurrency initiative is really welcome, and it is hoped that other African countries will pick from what she has done.
So as we wrap up now, some would say 100 days is too short to really get an idea of how a tenure will run. It's not enough to really judge the possible successes that we might see in the future. But in 100 days, what do you think has been the most success of President Hassan's presidency so far? And as you project ahead to the first 1 year, what do you think we should expect economically?
It may be too early to project into the future, but what we have on ground now, I think the most impressive, as far as I am concerned, is her stance towards the COVID-19 by not denying COVID-19, by not, towing the same line with her predecessor. She has essentially appreciated the issue and accepted vaccines into the country and ensured that people take more measures against the COVID itself. And what this means is that when there's a reduction in COVID, investments will come, people will be willing to come into the country where data is provided, and then the hospitality industry will get a boost. All
right. Abdulateef Ahmed, News Central researcher, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And we will be keeping our eye. President Samia Suluhu Hassan, she is president of Tanzania, taking over after the death of President John Magufuli. Some interesting things happening. A lot of questions as to how much her presidency will deviate, both economically, politically, having to do with the civic space and freedom of speech, as well as the opposition from her predecessor. But with a few of these opening moves, it looks to be some interesting times in Tanzania. We'll be keeping an eye on what is a beacon of stability, both economically and politically, in the eastern parts of the continent. You're watching Business Edge. It is a Monday, which means it's time now for the Tiger Wit Weekly Forecast. And as we wrap things up, let's give you a few stories that we are keeping our eyes on. We start in the southern part of the continent, where petrochemical firm Sasol says it is selling the stake in the Romco pipeline from Mozambique to South Africa to a consortium of investors, including Retail Group, for an initial amount of 4.15 billion rand. That's about $293 million. Sasol said in a statement that they can confirm they've received preemptive rights notices and will now review the notice. And they believe that the successful partners will add significant value to this important regional energy asset. Kenya raised $1 billion in its Eurobond sale in 2 years, an oversubscription in what the National Treasury described as a sign of enormous confidence in Kenya's economy and prospects. Now, according to a statement by Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani, the 12-year bonds that were priced to yield 6.3% received more than $5.4 billion in orders after a successful roadshow that lasted 3 days. Nigeria's Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has said that Africa's largest economy is set to utilize the country's legal provisions that empower the federal government to collect taxes on profits made in the country by global technology and digital firms not based in the country, but with significant local economic presence. He was interacting with a delegation of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria when he made these comments. And finally on our list, Ghana Oil Company Limited has revealed that it is in search of new exploration partners for its deepwater Cape 3 Points project. This is hinged on the exit of ExxonMobil, which left Ghana last year due to concerns on risk. The American firm relinquished 100% of its exploration rights. And that's it on this edition of Business Edge. Don't forget, we are live on YouTube. We're live on Star Times channel 274. You can also watch us outside of the continent, and you can keep up with what we're doing by downloading our mobile app on your App Store or your Play Store. Until next time, I'm Tolu Lokwe Adeleru Balogun.